Okay, hello everybody, and today on the podcast we've got the lovely Vicky from Bethnal and Beck Luxury Stays, who has grown her listings to now encompass 4 properties. Vicky's run her listings alongside her husband for over 5 years successfully, and so she's got a wealth of knowledge I hope to tap into for our listeners' benefit. So hello Vicky, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem. So, like we discussed, we like to start with your funniest guest story.
Then that's going to be mid last year. We were struggling with finding cleaners that would work to our high standards, which I'm sure many listeners that have other places themselves will be able to relate to. And so I think probably one experience springs to mind. We don't tend to see our guests. We have a lock and key system, and we send out codes. And on this particular occasion, we were in cleaning, and the guest arrived early. And obviously thought that we were the cleaners and not the owners, and proceeded to tell us quite a far-fetched story about how they'd been allowed to come early, and come in. And when I say early, I'm talking about our check-ins are 4 p.m. and they arrived at midday. So it's a bit like that current McDonald's advert where somebody's getting value for money. And they wouldn't really have it that it was actually Chris and I that were doing the cleaning, and that we wouldn't let them in. So it was funny and not funny all at the same time. But yeah, we felt. Sorry.
What happened in the end there?
Well, they went and sat in their car for a bit. I think they were a little bit embarrassed when they realised that this story that they'd concocted they'd been completely found out that it was actually, us, the owners. So we carried on cleaning. I mean, it takes us normally around 2 hours per retreat turnover. So they had a long wait, and then they drove off somewhere. But needless to say, we didn't hear from them for the rest of their stay.
Yeah, I suppose it's worth a try though, isn't it? I guess from their perspective, it's worth a try.
I guess so, yeah. I guess so. I think being taken as the cleaning team and spoken to as if we were the cleaning team, I think was the thing that annoyed me the most. It was just a really interesting interaction when people think that you aren't who you are. If that makes sense. So maybe they'd thought that Vicky and Chris were people that weren't that close to their business, and yeah, it was an interesting little insight, and it also made us realise that we needed to sort that, because it's all very well allowing guests to arrive early if it's convenient for you, but that is as it comes at an expense as your business, because they use electricity and we're on oil, which is 350% more expensive than it was 3 years ago, and all of these considerations. So yeah, we need to think about that for our property that we're not living next to, that we're opening this year.
Definitely. I think maybe the cleaners, if it was the cleaners, might not have been so assertive. Maybe they'd have let him in.
Absolutely, yes. It's a good point, because we know that it has happened before when we did have cleaning team in, and they did let them in, and then the guests ironically complained. So yeah, expectation management, I guess, is what we call it, don't we?
Yeah, but I think that we can do more of that sort of later on in the podcast. Hopefully, got some more tips around that for listeners. But just in terms of your background to your listing and how you actually ended up going into the industry. I mean, how is it that you actually decided in 2017 to start the Bethnal and Beck Luxury Stays?
So Chris and I met online 9 and a half years ago. I was a single parent to a then 3-year-old, and he had 3 children under 6 that he was has custody of. So we met online, and Chris was living in Hertfordshire, and I was living in southwest London, happily. Uh, and basically, we were late 30s. We had to make some decisions quite quickly about whether this relationship was going to go anywhere with children in tow. I had my own business in London, which I had for 12 years, which was in hospitality, but in a very different sector. And Chris was the CEO of a logistics business in London as well. And so we decided that we wanted to move in together, that was going to happen in Hertfordshire. And we also decided that we didn't want to be spending 4 hours a day commuting. And how could we overcome that? And I'd always had a little sort of dream of having a B&B, I guess, but realised that mornings aren't my forte, and probably cooking breakfast for people were even less so. Um, so we came up with the idea of holiday accommodation, and also because when we were dating and we had our child-free weekends, we were going to places that it was either a hotel or travel quite a long way for something. Airbnb 8, 9 years ago wasn't a thing. It was sort of chintzy self-catering places that were very basic, and your home was better, or a hotel. So we felt that there may be something in that we could create a vibe that we liked. We hung out a lot in Soho House. It was in London. It was part of our friendship group, and I love the style, and I love the whole creativity around it. So we bought the house that we now live in solely with the intention of opening our business, because it had the land and it had the outbuildings, and planning permission had been granted before and had lapsed. So we knew that there was scope to be able to convert, which is actually quite a big issue. When you look at a nice house with a barn, you can't necessarily turn it into something. So that's how we ended up here, and then we carried on working our jobs whilst we started the ideas and the build for our business. Everything took literally 10 times longer than we planned, because although we bought a building that had planning consent lapsed, all of these new historical England rules had come in, and our original house was built in 1630. So we had to have archaeological digs, we had to have all of this stuff that cost a lot of money, took a lot of time. And we carried on working in London and getting on the train and doing what we hoped we didn't have to do, but we did it. And we finally opened in 2017, essentially building a place that we wanted to stay in ourselves. So and Bethnal and Beck, the name comes from, I lived in Tooting Bec. It's where I was plucked from to come to the depths of Hertfordshire. And Bethnal Green was where Chris lived pre-children. So we thought of that name as a combination, because actually we thought that the majority of our guests would be from London when we first opened. And in fact, it was the smallest percentage of our guests that came from London. But also we didn't want something twee. Not that there's anything wrong with, the barns wherever, but we didn't want that. We were trying to go for the cool, slightly edgy, a little bit different, and trying to set ourselves as a bit of a unique place in the market. So Bethnal and Beck Luxury Retreats is actually what we originally called ourselves, and that name lasted for a couple of years. And then we moved across to Luxury Stays after COVID, because we found that people thought retreats were a bit more, they came and did yoga and stayed for a long time and that sort of thing. And also that word was being used quite a lot by hotels. So it was started to become a little bit tricky. So we felt staycation is a word that is somewhat, people get quite offended if you use it, because traditionally it means you stay at home and have a holiday. And after COVID, it became a word that people used to holiday in the UK. And so we came up with luxury stays to sort of encompass as well our growing brand of properties.
Fantastic, yeah. And you mentioned there, which is quite interesting. You expected before you got into the business, the majority of your customers to come from London, the majority of your guests to come from London. What did
Yeah.
it end up doing in terms of the split? I mean, you mentioned it's a very small percentage. What was the percentage of Londoners, and where did the rest of the people come from? Do you get many international guests, or is it mainly from the UK as well? And if so, whereabouts in the UK?
So we pre-COVID, there's a very definite line for us pre and post COVID, for a lot of things. Definitely for how the demographics changed in our business. Pre-COVID, I think if we got 5% of our business from London, we'd be surprised. Tiny. Our biggest, so basically we are a 2 hour radius from us is our largest share of guests. And the biggest counties are Essex, Kent, and Milton Keynes, actually, that way. So Essex and Kent and the estuary, absolutely, it's phenomenal. It's about 70% of our guests. Why? I don't know. Post COVID, we're now looking at about 35 to 40% of our guests from London. Also a slightly different demographic. We've got younger guests coming to stay. And we still have a lot from Kent and Essex, but we've also really changed our marketing strategy. We're a lot more, we do much more, so we reach more people than we did pre-COVID. So that's had an impact. But yeah, the London markets has been a big change for us.
That's interesting. In terms of you said you've changed your marketing. I mean, so obviously the majority of people go through platforms sort of like Airbnb, Booking.com, things like that. So are you actually employing any direct marketing tactics? I mean, obviously you guys have a website. Do you try and encourage more direct bookings through the website? Do you have any strategies to try and achieve that? What do you mean by you've changed your marketing?
Mm-hmm. When we opened, our decision was never to be listed with OTAs, mainly because we felt my husband and I have marketing background. I'm by trade a brand manager when I started out in life, and a graphic designer. And I wanted to utilize those skills in our business. And we just decided that we didn't want to spend 20-25% on someone else booking. So when we launched directly. We used Super Control as the booking platform, which is the market leader in self-catering. And we opened with a website, which I built. And we initially started out on Facebook. We did list with Airbnb, mainly because people were obviously and understandably nervous booking with a business that had only just opened, and probably didn't have, we could have been a fraud. It happens. So we listed with Airbnb. We get maybe 3 bookings a year now from Airbnb. And in all honesty, we'd rather not have them from other platforms, because we believe that a huge part of our brand, and the reason why we've grown and we have 86 to 87% utilization on all of our rooms, is because from the touch point, from the minute that somebody finds us, they get good connection. We talk to our guests all the time, and we nurture them and we look after them. And so we do that by being very active on social media. So historically, Facebook. Then we really started with Instagram a couple of years ago. It's just worth mentioning that from opening, a year into being open, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that obviously threw a huge spanner in the works, and therefore all of my ideas and dreams of what I wanted to build went out the window. We to be honest, we got through that. We didn't push the business. It just sort of ticked over. And then we came out of that and finished treatment late 2019, and then obviously COVID hit. So I spent the time during COVID, because obviously we were closed. The first lockdown, I just spent time doing all of the amazing courses that are free and widely available online, of Instagram, of understanding it, of how to get the most out of it, TikTok, email marketing. I spent that time refreshing and learning and training myself. It was very hard to know what to talk about on social media with a business that, is closed and everything that was going on. But we went through that, and we became, that's also when we became much more active on our socials with regards to our family, and actually opening up our business and allowing people to see that we're not just a room. And so that's grown, and we're now on TikTok, which is huge, absolutely massive in terms of getting direct bookings.
Wow.
So that's how we roll. And so yes, 99% of our bookings are direct. We are on listing sites like Dog Friendly Cottages, and we pay £100 and you're listed, but we're doing that more from an SEO perspective than expecting to get bookings.
That's a very good strategy there. So because obviously you're getting the links from the listing sites, I guess that's improving your site's reputation on Google, and then that's getting you higher up the rankings. Is that right?
Absolutely, really important. I cannot stress SEO on your website. I spent a year last year really working on it, and with somebody that and paying somebody that really knows their stuff. And I have to say, it's a slow burner. It takes a good 4 to 5 months to get it embedded. But our backlinks and everything now is just phenomenal. And our presence on Google as a small business, I'm really proud of. And that just works for you. That's there, sitting there. I'm now currently, my strategy for this year, I'm now doing Google Ads courses online. They're all free. I'm doing Facebook ads courses. It's out there, and I don't believe that you need to pay large sums of money for other people to book your accommodation, and then people turn up, they've not really had an experience with your brand so far, or your business. This is how we want to run our business. There are obviously people out there that it is a place, people pay for it, they go and they leave, and that's all fine. We've all got our place in this world. For us, really having that connection with guests, and then sending them out into the world and to tell people about us, is something that we feel is important and actually financially rewarding.
And do you find that when you're booking direct, can you have a closer relationship with guests than going through the OTAs?
Totally. We went on booking.com for about 6 weeks, maybe 2.5 years ago, and we came off it because we couldn't interact. It's a closed system, the bookings are with them. We add on loads of things when people come to stay with us, and we like to really understand what people are here for and what they want to do, and if we can tweak it. We have what we call our curated experiences section, where we work with local businesses so that people can enhance their stays with us. Can't offer any of that on OTAs. It's a closed system, and then basically that guest is theirs, that their information is theirs. Whereas email marketing is so powerful. Once you've had somebody through your door that's experienced you and they like you, then then they're a great advocate to go out and tell their friends about you. And that's a really powerful thing. And if you get that right and you have, workflows set in place, which we do, that the contact points for guests, you can get them talking about you and selling your business for you. With an OTA, I'm just getting the money and that's it.
Yeah,
There's
because you're kind of transacting through their site entirely, and you can't really get the data. You can't control the customer interaction so well. So it's great that you guys have kind of found a way to circumvent it and are being successful in that, mainly through sort of social media and some pretty nifty SEO strategies by the sounds of it. So, I mean, just in terms of like a normal hosting day for yourself, how does it look from sort of start to finish?
we have 3 properties which with check-ins Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays. Very rarely do we not have a triple check-in. So those are our very busy days. Currently, my husband and I are cleaning. We couldn't find, as I said at the beginning of this, we just struggled with cleaners, and also we just felt in terms of a cost saving measure mid last year when we could see the cost of living crisis looming, and oil prices were going through the roof for us. All of these things, we thought, you know what, we can sort of get back to grassroots, see what needs to be done, rethink how we do this. So we started to do that. So a Monday and a Wednesday and a Friday is crazy. We clean for 6 hours. We've got 4 children. We do everything that's needed. And then on a Tuesday and a Thursday, which currently we have allowed one night stays because again, that's been demand. We've allowed it over this period because again, we were worried and nervous about what was going to happen. So we are essentially cleaning most days, but the rest of the time we'll be building our business. I run and do all of the marketing and the creatives. My husband does a lot more strategy. He's also learned how to fix things and where we can save money, and he is the one that plans all of our new projects. So he planned the folding box build. He's now planning the build for our new place down in Suffolk. That takes a lot of time and energy. And I do all of the design. And then between us, we look after the kids. So busy days. Working from home and having your business next to your home is not ideal for work-life balance. If I could pick this house up and put it somewhere else, I would.
I was going to say, it's funny, probably people.
But yeah,
I wish I could get rid of the commute, and either work from home or have the office closer. But I guess when it's like right next to you, you just can't escape it, right?
You can't, and we are there for our guests. I mean, we're also very strict. We have a very we say to them, we're not a hotel, we're not a reception service, but obviously if something goes wrong, you've got to fix it. And just by the sheer fact that I walk out of my back door and there is the business, you're never quite away from it. So that's proved quite challenging. And I think when you throw COVID in the mix, when we've all been sat in our houses as well for what seems like years on end, yeah, we've started to take little busman's holidays away ourselves this last 6 months to have a bit of switch off, and also it allows some creative thinking when you're not sitting at home as well. I think
Your own staycations,
you
right?
haven't got the commute.
Very good.
Exactly, all about the staycations.
Brilliant. So, just in terms of your top 3 tips for Airbnb hosts, if you could just pick the top 3 things that you would want to leave our listeners with, what would you say they would be?
So for Airbnb hosts, obviously, there's a platform there that's incredible and efficient and amazing. I would say though that don't lose sight of the fact that you have got people coming to stay with you that you can interact with beyond Airbnb. So having social media. So for example, going back to what I just said, we go away for staycations, we do book through Airbnb. I always look for their Instagram page or their Facebook page or their TikTok. I think it's nice to interact with people that are coming to stay with you. I think marketing is important. Clear pictures, really important. Any Airbnb listing that doesn't show clear pictures of bathrooms, beds, lounge area, giving me a good idea of what I can experience, I just move on. I don't want to see a picture of a vase, in an artistic way. That's okay, but I also want to see where I'm staying. Um, and yeah, I think as well, but if you're an Airbnb host, um, you can also follow up with your guests. Why not? We've stayed in Airbnbs where they have then left a card that is okay. If you want to rebook, then you can maybe do it through us or directly. As I say, Airbnb is great, but there is a lot of places on there, so you've got to think about how you stand out and get picked.
That kind of feeds into trying to get more direct bookings, I guess, rather than going through the OTAs. So trying to build that relationship with guests who have actually stayed with you, and then getting them to book direct with you next time rather than necessarily through the platform, right?
Exactly. Why not? You're saving them all of the silly cleaning fees and now this admin fee that Airbnb add, which is completely arbitrary, and has put me off booking places when actually the cost of the fee and the cleaning fee is greater than the actual cost of the accommodation. Being obviously an accommodation owner myself, it just doesn't sit well with me. So why not use Airbnb as your funnel? That's the top of the funnel. You get your people in, and you then start with the, and maybe get them to recommend. Leave cards to if they've liked it, they can give it to their friends to book directly. It's use people when you have them in your place. Don't just see them as a one-off. That there is potential there to get them to market for you or to rebook.
Brilliant. And so you mentioned earlier that you were using something called Super Control. I didn't know if you just wanted to explain that for listeners, and if there were any other tools that you use to make your day-to-day hosting life easier.
Mm-hmm. So Super Control is a booking platform, but importantly, it's a booking platform that holds credit card details, which not many others do. We have security deposits when guests stay due to the nature of our properties, and they're very high end with a lot of expensive items in them. We hold a £200 security deposit. And also we want everything to be done online. So we're not the business that you email and, again, going back traditionally to self-catering, you'd email and ask what dates are available and go backwards and forwards. So I guess we're trying to model and copy what you would get as an experience by booking on Airbnb. You go on, you select your property, you do it all online in one place, and that's essentially what our guests do. So the front end of that for us is our Wix website. We chose Wix because it means that we can manage the website entirely. We have used other platforms which haven't worked as well, such as Wordspace, and another site that somebody built for us right at the beginning claimed that we would be able to use it and we couldn't. So Wix I find really easy to use. I can add and subtract elements to my site as I need to. So for example, I've just launched our Bethnal and Beck shop.
Nice.
We have honesty larders in our retreats where we stock locally made products from chocolate to jewelry, and everything in between. And we will now be able to sell those online, plus postal vouchers. We do e-gift cards, but we've noticed that there's a move more now towards people wanting that physical voucher in their hand again. So with Super Control and Wix, that allows us to offer all of that on a website without us having to get involved. And importantly, hold credit card details securely and following all GDPR without us having to worry about that. So those are the two main tools for us. And then beyond that, you've got social media, which I've touched on before. So Facebook, it's a very different bunch of people that follow us to those that follow us on the gram. Our Facebook guests tend to be older. Was traditionally our dog. We have, out of our 3 retreats, 2 of them are dog friendly. Huge market for anybody that is thinking about extra revenue streams. Dogs. If I had £1 for every time somebody said, "Oh, if you have a dog in, we don't allow dogs because they ruin the place," and we've never had a problem, and we've probably had 300 plus dogs in. So it's about setting those expectations, and I think, so we have our dog market on Facebook, although that is changing. We have a huge following, so we have about 7,500 followers on Facebook. All grown organically. We have nearly 20,000 now on Instagram, and on TikTok we started doing that quite seriously at the end of last year. We've sort of played around with it last year, and now we're sort of getting serious about it. We had a travel blogger come and stay with us just before Christmas, and she created an amazing TikTok reel that has generated us probably about 25 bookings in 2 weeks.
Wow. You don't mind, what was the cost of that? I mean, was it just a free stay, or did you actually compensate?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a free stay, yeah. So we also have a content creator agreement that we work with people. I call them content creators because I'm not actually interested in them posting about when they are staying here and expecting the bookings to flood in. I want to take their content, their user-generated content, and I want to then be able to use that for my content. And that gives me different angles, it gives me different stories. There's only so much that Chris and I can take pictures of. We do have professional photography, and as lovely as it is, you need to keep it fresh and keep it real. That is the hard work behind social media, but it works for us. It takes me 5 minutes to create a reel, and there is a lot of satisfaction when you do that, sitting in bed on a Sunday morning and then 2 bookings come in off the back of it. That's a definite win when that happens. So yeah, we're now really getting into TikTok, and I'm
sorry, go on.
Doing Pinterest. Pinterest as well is another area that we are. We have beautifully curated properties, so why not pop them on Pinterest and see what we get from there.
Fantastic. I was going to say, I think in terms of if you offset the cost of a free stay, for example, for a content creator, and then being able to take their content, obviously you can vet them and you can see their content online. But if you offset that against the cost of a professional photo shoot, I think it's probably the return on investment is probably a lot stronger from that, rather than actually, hiring a professional photographer to come around for a day, because even that their day rates can be, upwards of £500, right? And
exactly, and it's also weather dependent and all sorts of factors, which we've had photo shoots organized and planned, and they've had to be rearranged, because of weather. And so I schedule 3 months ahead, people coming to stay. I also set criteria of shots that I want, content that I want. I'm very clear about it. It is a business transaction. We are gifting you a night. You want to do that, and in return you can stay, and this is the content that I need. And I don't feel bad about that. You know, it's when we first started, I felt a bit bad or awkward asking them, because I was like, oh, I want them to have a nice stay. And but now I've realised that you can get the best, what used to be called influencers in the world. That doesn't mean that they're going to get you lots of bookings. And I also think that that's a very saturated market myself. People switch off now. I certainly do when I see ad and gifted. Um, and so that's why I've moved away. I basically say to them, if you do post, I don't want you to say it's ad or gifted, because I'm not asking you to post. You do that off of your own back. And then I just take your content, repurpose it, my reels or my website or
Great way
wherever I want to use it.
Great way to get for lower cost content. It seems that's a really good tip. Yeah, just moving on to the state of the market in the UK. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on right now around cost of living, the impact that might be having on consumer spending. Obviously, staying in an Airbnb is discretionary, which is a potential to get hit by that. Are you guys seeing anything in terms of the bookings that you're taking at the moment? Do you have any concerns going into 2023, or are you feeling quite confident?
We are, yes, everything you said is absolutely right. Very much discretionary, but there are people out there that do have the money, and can still afford to go away. And I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier, where when you've got those relationships with people. So I am now very much pulling on all of my database of guests that have stayed. I'm enticing them to think about coming back, or asking them to tell other people. I'm doing the pulling the heartstrings of a small business and all of that stuff. And that's where I think when you're on an OTA platform, you are sat there hoping that you'll be picked in the lineup. And that lineup is long. It is a saturated market. I think certainly after COVID, there was a huge. It was didn't Airbnb report a 300% increase in listings, or in certain boroughs, because people were like, oh, okay, I'll put my room on, or I'll put my flat on, or we felt that people were going out and buying properties to let because of this staycation boom. So it's saturated. That doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever, but it does mean that you've got to stand out, and you've got to have a good story. You've got to have a consistent story. You've got to have a reason, a hook. Why do people want to come and stay with you when they can go on booking.com and but it's hard. We've had a really strong booking. The booking season opens pretty much Boxing Day and goes through to the first 2 weeks of January. We have had our strongest one. Now, that's difficult to say with 2 years of COVID, but we've had our strongest one 3 weeks since we've been operating. But those people that were out there, and the ones that want to book and have to have that in the diary, they've now booked and it's completely dipped off. So this is where we now start going, okay, now we've just got to keep there, and we've got to stay there, and we've got to keep popping up on people's socials and going, hi, remember me, or save this for that day that you want to remember somewhere that you're going to book, be it next week, next month, 6 months. It's that content and contact, and it's also the quality of your content, showcasing where people are staying, what's good about coming to stay here, what can you do locally, how big's the bed, how big's the TV, all of those things that maybe you take for granted. I want to stay somewhere that has a king size bed. Okay. I will not book anywhere that has a double bed. If I can't tell what size the bed is, I won't book, and I'll move on to the next one. So double down, think about the detail, think about what people want to know. Don't approach everything that it's the way that you would do it and what you want. You've also got to think about what other people might want to know, might want to see. And so I think you have to be really strong, and I think we will market our way through it. And there are going to be that down times. I mean, October and November last year was awful. we normally get at least a booking a day. We were lucky to get a booking a week. And that's why we opened up one night stays, and we did various things to incentivize. You have to do that, but we've been happy, shall we say, with the bookings. But now March is looking quiet, weirdly, but April's really busy. So
Well,
it's tough. You've got to adapt.
definitely. I think obviously the market is potentially got a bit saturated as people have seen the opportunity. Like you say, I think the number of listings on Airbnb has grown quite significantly, and a lot of those people have come into the market more recently. But obviously, people like yourselves with a bit more history, and obviously the relationship you've already got with guests who've stayed with you previously, but also being able to circumvent the OTAs seems to be something that a strength that you can really play to, and hopefully sort of continue in what potentially could be a difficult year in 2023. And I think potentially what will happen is the people who have entered will realize, potentially the market's a bit too saturated, and probably the people who've come more recently will probably leave, a little bit quicker. And I think, the guys that have been on longer term like yourselves will kind of carry on. So good to hear it's busy for you guys. And what we like to do for the end of the podcast is just round up with your second funniest guest story.
Well, I think it will probably revolve around things that people leave behind that they probably didn't want to leave behind and forget to pack, without being too specific. And we tend to, if people have left items, then we will write to guests and say, you've left this item, would you like us to post it back to you? Because there is a cost involved in that. And 9 times out of 10 they do, and we charge a fiver, and we'll send it back. But we don't tend to with certain items that we find. We just get them posted back. We pop them in the post quietly and pretend that nobody saw anything and move on.
I see, and that happens regularly
If
enough.
only the walls could talk.
And that seems to happen regularly enough that you have a system for it. So, right. I think we all know what you're talking about. But Vicky, that's really good stuff. I think there's some really good tips for our listeners there. And yeah, thank you very much for being with us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.